Beyond the Gates spoilers tease that Andre had a clandestine affair with Dani, a secret both of them have worked hard to conceal. Beneath the surface of polite smiles and carefully orchestrated interactions, the tension simmers, threatening to explode at any moment. Andre, a man torn between passion and convenience, finds himself trapped in a game of emotional manipulation and deceit. Dani, for her part, plays the role of a woman who has made peace with her mistakes, but in reality, her silence is not born of guilt or regret. It is a shield, a way to protect what remains of her dignity and control. Andre is entangled in a committed relationship with Ashley, a woman who believes their bond is unshakable. She trusts Andre, unaware that he has betrayed that trust in the most personal of ways. Their relationship is rooted in mutual respect, or so she believes. Ashley views their connection as something that can weather any storm, but little does she know, the storm is already brewing just beneath the surface. The foundation of their love is built on quicksand, and Andre knows it. Yet instead of coming clean, he doubles down on his deception, stringing both women along with a reckless sense of entitlement. Meanwhile, Dani remains oblivious to the full extent of Andre's betrayal. She doesn't know that Ashley exists in Andre's heart, or at least that he continues to promise Ashley a future. To Dani, Andre was a fleeting escapean impulsive decision born out of emotional vulnerability. Their intimacy was never supposed to mean anything more. And yet, in the echo of their shared moments, a complication is growing within Hera life, a heartbeat that wasn't part of the plan. Dani's heart, however, belongs elsewhere. Her soul remains tethered to Bill, her ex-husband, a man she still loves despite everything. The irony of it all lies in her continued devotion. She visits Bill in the hospital often, a routine that borders on obsession. Even with Haley, Bill's current wife, present and visibly uncomfortable, Dani persists. She brings homemade soup, fluffs Bill's pillows, reads him books he once loved, and whispers memories from their past like fragile charms to ward off the darkness. Her presence is undeniable, a constant reminder to Haley that the past is never truly past. Haley watches it all unfold with a quiet fury. She sees Dani's attentions, the way Bill lights up when she enters the room, the faint twitch of his smile that Haley hasn't seen in months. The knowledge that her husband may still love his ex-wife gnaws at her like a slow-growing infection. But Haley remains silent, for now, because she knows that if she lashes out, she risks looking petty, jealous, unstable. Instead, she documents. She observes. She waits. Andre, in the meantime, juggles his dual lives with increasingly shaky hands. He feeds Dani vague promises and gives Ashley shallow reassurances. To Ashley, he is the picture of loyalty. To Dani, he is the conflicted lover torn by circumstance. But the lie is eating him alive, and paranoia begins to take root. He checks his phone obsessively, deletes texts with trembling fingers, and jumps at shadows. The thought that the two women might someday cross paths, speak freely, exchange truths, it terrifies him. But secrets have a way of clawing their way to the surface. Dani starts to feel different. It begins with subtle signs: nausea in the morning, a sudden aversion to coffee, a tenderness that startles her when she brushes against a counter. She dismisses them at first. Stress, she tells herself. It's all just stress. But when the symptoms persist, she takes a test. The result changes everything. The positive sign on the stick sends a ripple of cold fear through her veins. This was not supposed to happen. She stares at the test for what feels like hours, her hands trembling, her thoughts spinning. There's no mistaking the timing. This child, it has to be Andre's. For a moment, she considers silence. She imagines going through the pregnancy alone, keeping the truth buried alongside the regret. But reality settles in like a weight on her chest. She cannot raise a child without acknowledging the father. And worse, the thought of her child growing up never knowing the truth, it gnaws at her, a quiet but persistent ache. So she tells Andre. The confession happens in private, in the small office space where they once whispered promises in the dark. She doesn't cry, doesn't scream. She just says it, plain and simple. I'm pregnant. It's yours. Andre freezes. For the first time in his charmed, double-life existence, he has no script, no smooth response, no clever deflection. He stares at Dani as if she's speaking a language he doesn't understand. And then, as if possessed, he shakes his head. No. It can't be. We were careful. You said. Dani cuts him off. I know what I said. I know what we did. And I know what this means. But Andre refuses to acknowledge it. He accuses her of trying to trap him, of fabricating the story to ruin his life. His words are cruel, venomous, and when Dani walks out of the office, she does so with a heart hardened by betrayal. The man she thought might one day step up has revealed himself to be nothing more than a coward. The betrayal transforms her. Dani becomes steely resolved. She stops visiting Bill so often, stops showing vulnerability. She begins to plan. Not just for herself, but for her child. She will raise this baby, and she will do it without Andre. But she also knows she cannot let him off the hook entirely. There must be consequences. Meanwhile, Ashley begins to notice the cracks in Andre's facade. He becomes distant, distracted. He makes excuses, forgets dates, pulls away during conversations. Her instincts whisper that something is wrong, and eventually, she listens. One evening, she follows him. Not out of malice, but out of desperation for truth. What she sees devastates her. Andre, meeting Dani in the parking lot behind a clinic. Their body language is tense charged. Ashley watches from the car, frozen as Dani turns and storms away while Andre pounds his fist against the wall in frustration. The sight confirms what her heart already knew. Andre has been lying. Ashley doesn't confront him immediately. She waits, gathering proof, replaying every moment they shared, every kiss that now feels counterfeit. She begins to connect the dots, and it doesn't take long before the truth emerges in full color. The pieces fit too perfectly. At the same time, Dani contemplates a bold move. She knows that if she doesn't speak her truth, Andre will continue to paint himself as the victim. And if Ashley finds out the wrong way, the fallout could be even more destructive. So Dani considers going public. She considers telling everyone, revealing the affair, the pregnancy, and Andre's refusal to take responsibility. Not to destroy him, but to liberate herself. To stop living in shadows. The town whispers begin. Small, hushed tones at cafes, exchanged glances at the market. People start to notice Dani's changing figure. Questions circulate. And soon enough, the fragile veil Andre has tried so desperately to maintain begins to tear. But what happens when a secret once buried begins to rot beneath the surface? What happens when the people involved are no longer willing to lie? Because Dani isn't the only one with secrets. And as the web continues to unravel, every thread pulled reveals something darker underneath. The story is no longer just about an affair. It's about choices, consequences, and the lives irrevocably altered by one moment of betrayal. As Dani prepares to face the world with her head held high, Andre begins to spiral. His perfect image crumbles. Ashley, armed with truth, starts making plans of her own. And Haley, watching from the sidelines, begins to see opportunity in the chaos. Nothing remains still. The storm is coming. Dani stood before her mirror, brushing her hand across her slowly rounding belly, not with fear anymore, but with fierce determination. She had spent weeks mourning the life she thought she could have with Andre, the illusion of stability, the fantasy of support. That part of her was gone. What remained was a mother, a woman reshaped by betrayal and ignited by purpose. If Andre wouldn't stand up for this child, then he would face the consequences of walking away. She began documenting everything. The timeline, the text messages, the receipts from their meetings, the night it all happened. She wanted proof. Not for revenge, but for the day she might have to look her child in the eyes and explain who their father was. Every step she took now was calculated, measured, resolute. Ashley, meanwhile, was unraveling in silence. The revelation that Andre had betrayed her with Dani was a wound she couldn't stop bleeding. But her pain did not manifest in tears or outbursts. It turned inward, sharpening her instincts and hardening her resolve. She no longer confronted Andre with emotion. She watched him, tested him, and every lie he told added another nail in the coffin of their relationship. What he didn't know was that Ashley had already spoken to Dani. A quiet, measured encounter in the corner booth of a nearly empty cafe. They had met not as enemies, but as women trying to piece together the truth. There were no raised voices, no thrown accusations. Dani had been honest, perhaps too honest, revealing everything: the affair, the pregnancy, and Andre's refusal to acknowledge it. Ashley had listened without interruption, her face unreadable. Then, with a soft but cutting tone, she had simply said, "Thank you for telling me." That meeting altered the course of everything. Ashley began dismantling Andre's life without his knowledge. Quietly withdrawing funds from their joint accounts, changing passwords, rerouting her mail. She set up appointments with lawyers, reviewed their shared assets, and calculated exactly how much damage she could inflict with a well-timed revelation. She wasn't interested in petty revenge. She wanted him to feel what it meant to lose everything. Andre, meanwhile, sensed something was off. Ashley had gone quiet. Too quiet. Dani had stopped responding to his calls, and when he did see her, her gaze cut like glass. He felt the walls closing in, but his arrogance told him it would all blow over. It always did. He had lived his life skating just above disaster, charming his way out of every consequence. This time, though, the ice was thinner than he realized. Haley observed from her perch beside Bill's hospital bed, no longer simply a passive bystander. She had long suspected that Dani's lingering devotion to Bill ran deeper than just concern. But now, with everything unraveling around Andre and Dani, Haley sensed an opportunity. Not just to protect her marriage, but to manipulate the board to her advantage. She began planting seeds. Gentle suggestions to Bill that Dani's visits were interfering with his healing, that perhaps he needed to set firmer boundaries. She spoke with hospital staff, hinting that Dani's presence might not be conducive to a calm recovery. But most of all, she began reaching out to Ashley. Casual messages at first, then more direct invitations to coffee, subtle mentions of shared frustration with Dani's behavior. Ashley, knowing full well what Haley was doing, played along. She found it almost entertaining to watch Haley attempt to weave her own web. But Haley underestimated Ashley. What she didn't see coming was Ashley using those meetings to gather her own intelligence. She learned about Bill, about the dynamics between Dani and Haley, about the night Dani had stayed long after Haley had left, just holding Bill's hand. In a masterstroke of poetic symmetry, Ashley decided to reveal the truth not with a confrontation, but with a celebration. She invited everyone to a small gathering under the guise of a charity benefit for Bill's medical recovery fund. It was elegant, tasteful, and utterly deceptive. The guest list was carefully curated. Dani, of course, was invited. So was Andre, unaware of the trap he was walking into. Haley agreed to attend, eager to see Dani put in her place. Bill, recovering but well enough to sit and observe, was rolled in by his nurse and placed near the front. The night began like any other event: wine, laughter, shallow conversations. But as the evening wore on, Ashley took the microphone. She thanked everyone for attending. She spoke of resilience, of truth, of how betrayal shapes people into who they're meant to become. Then, with surgical precision, she revealed it all. The affair. The pregnancy. The denials. The lies. She didn't name names, but the room didn't need them. All eyes found Andre. And then Dani. And then Bill, whose face turned white. Haley gasped audibly, her hand flying to her mouth. Andre tried to speak, to defend himself, but the damage was done. Dani stood, face pale but resolute, and walked out of the room. Ashley followed shortly after, her point made, her strength reclaimed. The fallout was swift and unforgiving. Andre's reputation imploded. Colleagues distanced themselves. His professional prospects dried up almost overnight. He tried reaching out to Dani, to Ashley, even to Bill, but the door had been closed, bolted, and sealed. Dani, now fully committed to her pregnancy, chose to step into her new life without shame. She began attending prenatal classes, secured a stable job, and found comfort in the support of friends who admired her strength. The pain lingered, but so did clarity. Ashley moved on quietly with grace. She didn't dwell in the ruins of her relationship. Instead, she used the experience as fuel, launching a campaign for women's advocacy and support. Her name became synonymous with empowerment, her story a testament to resilience. Haley, left to navigate the awkward silence that followed, found herself increasingly isolated. Bill, after hearing the full truth, had begun to drift. He didn't immediately reach for Dani, but he also no longer held tightly to Haley. Their marriage, once fragile, now fractured. In the weeks that followed, Dani and Bill had one final conversation. Not in secret, and not with the emotional weight of rekindled romance, but with mutual respect. Dani told him everything, not to win him back, but to clear the air. Bill listened, nodded, and thanked her for her honesty. Then he asked the one question that had haunted him. "Do you still love me?" Dani paused. The answer was complicated. She cared for him, yes. She always would. But love, the kind that binds two people together through fire and ruin, that love had changed. It had grown into something else, something more maternal, more protective, perhaps even more selfless. She loved the idea of who they had been. But she was no longer that woman. And Bill, though grateful, knew she had outgrown the version of him she once adored. The final chapter of their story was not a reunion, but a release. Andre disappeared for a time. Rumors swirled that he had left town, moved west, tried to start over. No one followed up. No one really cared. His name became a cautionary tale, a whispered warning in late-night conversations. Dani gave birth to a healthy baby boy under a pale spring sky. She named him Gabriel. And though she raised him without his father's presence, she raised him surrounded by love. Ashley visited once, quietly, with a small gift and a soft smile. They didn't speak of the past. They didn't need to. In the end, every character found their reckoning. Not in fiery vengeance or courtroom battles, but in the quiet moments where truth replaced illusion. The past did not vanish, but it no longer held the power to define them. Each had chosen a different path forward, shaped by pain, illuminated by choice. And as the final days of that bitter winter faded into the brightness of spring, those who had once been bound by secrecy and betrayal began, at last, to breathe freely again.